But when people hear that variety is an important thing, they start to do some very strange things. You either see people changing their workouts every week, so they have day 1 to 4 in week 1, and they have a whole new batch of exercises coming into week 2. Or probably the worst thing that you could do is literally making it up on the spot. Hello and welcome to the Smart Strength Training Podcast. This is episode 23, and I've done an episode about how to build your own strength training program. So now we're coming in with the question of how often do you need to change your strength training workout? And really this leads into sort of how much exercise variety is needed when it comes to strength and when it comes to hypertrophy. And what's really interesting is that for one of those goals, variety is very, very important, or certainly important. For the other, it's borderline irrelevant. So you need to understand what your training goal is, and to a degree, that's going to answer the question of should you have much variety from the start. So let's talk about when you don't need much variety, because it's an easier one to cover to start with. And if you listen to my last podcast, I spoke about how strength was task specific. So if I want to get stronger at a particular exercise, I need to repeatedly practice the skill and manage the variables involved in that particular movement. And it also, when you're working within strength, it takes time to incrementally increase the load before going up. So you need more time with those skill-based exercises to gradually go heavier and go heavier. And because this is so task specific, if I want to get better at a back squat, I quite clearly need to practice a back squat. Same is true for a push-up or a pull-up, and that should be fairly logical. And we see this if you ever look at how a powerlifter would train or Olympic weightlifter would train, within those strength sport settings, they diligently practice the same skills over and over again. They might have a sprinkling of exercise variety to maybe mitigate injury and to maybe work through a particular plateau point in a lift, but they relentlessly, consistently practice those primary lifts. So for strength, if that's your goal, you do not need much variety at all. You just need relentless practice of a particular task. However, when it comes to building muscle, it becomes a bit more important. But when people hear that variety is an important thing, they start to do some very strange things. You either see people changing their workouts every week, so they have day 1 to 4 in week 1, and they have a whole new batch of exercises coming into week 2. Or probably the worst thing that you could do is literally making it up on the spot. You walk into the gym and you just kind of go, hey, what should I do today? I'm going to do legs. Right, leg press is free. I'm going to go over there. So when you hear exercise variety, if you think that means just crazy amounts of variation, that's a major issue. Because as much as exercise variety is important, and the reason it's important is that every exercise will maybe come at the muscle from a slightly different joint angle. You can be training a muscle into different amount of stretch in the muscle. So we have this slight change in stimulus. So by having more exercise variety, we get more varied stimulus, and to quote unquote, it leaves no stone unturned when it comes to creating a balanced workout. But just because exercise variety is important doesn't mean you have to go crazy with it. Think of it this way. I've touched on this before a few times. If you train 4 times per week and you've got 6 exercises per workout, that gives you 24 exercises in total. Of course, this is spread across your legs and quads, your hamstrings, your glutes, and upper body, chest, back, shoulders. But by default, by having those 24 exercises, you've got variety in place. Of course, that variety to a degree is going to be limited by the amount of times you train per week. If someone trains 4 or 5 times per week, they have more scope to do more exercises. If you train 3 times per week, that's going to be potentially a limiting factor. But the aim would be that you would still practice each of those workouts once per week. So let's say you're doing an upper body day and a lower body day. Each of those days will be different. So your 2 upper body days will be different and your 2 lower body days will be different, but you repeat the same exercises in those workouts on a weekly basis. But again, in that example, we've got 24 exercises in there. And then it comes to the question, so how often should I change the workout? Honestly, there's no correct, like industry-wide guaranteed best way to do this. If you enjoy more training variety, you could make alterations, say, every 4 weeks. If you enjoy a bit less, you could make variety or add in variety sort of every 6 weeks or so. And then when it comes to like the overall duration of the workout, honestly, it might last anything from 12 weeks up to 24 weeks. Because the goals, both for strength and hypertrophy, so if I'm trying to get stronger or build muscle, it all takes time. So you definitely want a minimum of 12 weeks. That would be, say, 4 weeks rotated through 3 times. Or if you want a longer one, obviously you could take that to 4 weeks rotated through 6 times. Or you could do 6 weekly programs rotated through 4 times. But when it comes to changing the workout, be it at the 4 week mark or the 6 week mark, you're not changing everything. You're going to make a few subtle tweaks. And you're honestly only going to change things that need to be changed. You're not going to just change it randomly. And the reality is at the 4 week mark, let's say, of your 12 week workout, you've only practiced those exercises 4 times. I don't expect you to be close to your max at that stage. There's no real reason to start changing too much. Potentially at the 8 week mark or the 12 week mark, because you've got 8 weeks of layered progression or 12 weeks of layered progression, you might want to make more changes to it. I do appreciate that people get bored, and that is a good enough reason to make changes, but don't make changes for the sake of it. And then also recognize that it's going to depend on the exercise. If you're doing a conventional deadlift or a sumo deadlift or a barbell back squat, they take ages to get to your max. The first 1 to 4 weeks, you're getting the load sort of set. Maybe you're sort of like making sure the form's okay, sort of fixing your depth. So it's going to take you a while to get to the point in which you're really maxing out on the exercise. But something like a seated hamstring curl machine, it's that much easier. You can get to the point of failure quicker. It's less skill. So you might want to rotate that out a bit more frequently. But when it comes to those changes, at each of the sort of 4 or 6 week mark, I would probably suggest at first you're just going to be changing those isolation, low skill based exercises, and you're really not going to touch those big compounds. So by compound, that's multiple joints and more than 2 joints, or 2 joints or more in motion. Or if the exercise, or especially let's say if the exercises can have a large external load, let's say something like a leg press. A leg press is less skill based than a back squat, but a leg press, you're lifting so much more external load. So when you're managing an exercise that has a lot of external load, again, like a RDL is harder. You can manage a lot more load on an RDL than you can a back extension machine. They are both a hip hinge, but because the RDL needs more external load or has the capacity to be used as more external load, you leave those in the workout much, much quicker. And we know that progression is the aim of the game. So we want to get to that point that we're pretty close to our max. We want that gradual layered progression over time. And because of that, I have a massive bias, I guess, on this topic. If you're the sort of person that wants to bounce around out of a workout every 8 weeks, but you've also thought to yourself, you're struggling to get stronger, I would say that approach of changing every 8 weeks is the exact reason why you're struggling. People need to make peace with the fact that everything within the framework of strength and building muscle takes time. I know social media influencers like to make out you can do things in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. It's a marketing lie. That's not what happens. But again, circling back to what I've already said, your enjoyment is key. So if variability and having a varied workout keeps you turning up, then because consistency trumps everything. So everything I've just said about my own opinions, if it's like, yeah, but I get bored, Andy, after 4 weeks. So if I'm changing my workouts every 12 weeks, I'm basically going to stop training. Then, of course, then you default to changing it as often as you need to. So like I said, to wrap this up, for strength training, you do not need much variety at all. For hypertrophy, it is smart to have more variety to train a muscle in different muscle lengths and different joint angles. But a lot of that variety will come from just naturally having a structured workout that you're tweaking across the either 12 weeks that it's running for or say 24 weeks that it's running for. When you hear the word exercise variety, if that makes you think you're going to change your workouts every single time, then that's a major, major issue because you hear that expression like mixing it up to keep your body guessing. It's laughably old school. It's such an outdated, factually incorrect statement. But fairly alarmingly, I still hear people I actually respect. They're not necessarily in the nitty gritty of the strength space, but very good podcasters and educators, potentially more so in the like nutrition space and like hormone space. Talk about variety, mixing up, making sure you keep your body guessing. That 100% is not the best way to go about strength and hypertrophy. So if you can recognize that variety is important, but you get variety from having a structured workout. And think of it this way: if you're doing a 12-week training program at a time and you rotate through 12-week strength training programs per year, that's going to give you 24 exercises at the build of the program every 12 weeks. Anyway, you might then make 6 changes through the 12 weeks. So every time it's like 30 exercises. That's going to give you tons. So what you're going to get 3, 6, 9, 120 different exercises across the calendar year. Each of those exercises you manage to stick to for a sustained period of time. That is the key to exercise variety. That is how you mix up your training to make sure you are hitting all these muscles from different angles. So when it comes to variety, it really, for me, the biggest take home is have a program and stick to it. And then by the way you change a program at the end of the 12 or 24 week mark, that's going to always bring in a lot of exercise variety, because at the end of 12 weeks, you then have that capacity to start the next 12 weeks, the whole batch of new exercises. So that's where the variety comes in. So this was the natural follow on from my how to build a strength training workout. So if you've not listened to that podcast episode, go back and listen to that. And then you should have all the tools you need to both build that workout and tweak it over time.